Hi, this is Kevin from Personal Finance Lab. In this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to get and format your portfolio data in a spreadsheet. I'm going to show you how to do this both in Microsoft Excel, which is the most common spreadsheet program in the business world, and Google Sheets, which is the most common spreadsheet program used in education. There's two major types of data that you're going to be able to import. This really differs on where you get the data from and how it actually goes into your spreadsheet. The most common is copy and pasting it from somewhere else. You're going to do this for pretty much everything that you find online if you want to bring this data into your spreadsheet to use. This is by far the most frequent thing you're going to do. The downside to the basic copy-paste is you're usually going to have to do a lot more formatting, especially if you get it from an online source. I'm going to have to show you how to clean up the data to make it a lot easier to use. The less common way is importing and exporting. This is if you are able to get some of the data you want from somewhere designed specifically for you to download that data. It's usually a lot easier to work with, but you need to know how to open this as well. So let me start with an example of how to copy and paste some data from an online source. So let's say I want to download my historical portfolio values. To do this, I would scroll down on my dashboard until I can see my portfolio value chart. And then I would click View Historical Portfolio Values. This will load a big long list showing you my portfolio value of every day of the competition. I'll just select all this data by scrolling down and highlighting it all, copying it, opening up a new spreadsheet, and pasting the data in it on the first cell. So, like I said, with data that you get from online, sometimes you're going to have to format it. So you can see here, this looks like it's just a bunch of number signs, but you can actually see the data up in the top here. This means that this data just doesn't fit in the space I gave it. So the easiest way to make it visible is you double-click this column heading. This makes it a little bit wider so all the data shows up. Now, if you want to paste all this data with all of the colors and text and things, instead of just pasting paste, go to the paste menu and click this version that says match destination formatting. This is just going to paste the data raw, meaning it's not going to have any of the fonts, it's not going to have any of the colors, which is usually a lot easier to work with. For Google Sheets, first open up a new Google Sheet at sheets.google.com. And do the same thing. Just paste the data into the first cell. Google Sheets will actually format the data a little bit better sometimes because the cells by default are a little bit bigger with a little bit smaller font size. To save your spreadsheet with all of your data pasted into it, for Excel, go to the Save button at the top of the screen to save your data. For Google Sheets, it will automatically save. All you need to do is rename this sheet. To export this data directly, we also have an export button built into the site. You can choose whether to download this as a spreadsheet, which you can use in Microsoft Excel, or you can export this directly to your Google Drive, in which case it will appear in your Drive account without ever having to download any data directly. Click the export button, it will download the file for you to use. If you need to reformat your data, you can do this just like you would with most types of documents. First, I'll start with Microsoft Excel. The most common first thing you might want to do to reformat your data is to make this a little bit easier to read. So you can see I have a font set and I have a bunch of different values set that are a little bit different than what Excel would normally use. So if I go to one of these cells that has no data in it, I can copy it, select all of the data that I want to reformat, and then instead of pasting any type of values, I can do paste formatting. That will copy the formatting of the different cells that I wanted to use before. The biggest problem here you'll see is the date no longer makes sense and the values are no longer formatted as dollars. So I will select this whole column, column A, and at the top here I will change the data type to a short date. That will give me my date value back. For value, I'll again select the whole column and click the dollar sign to change it back into dollars. To make sure that I know these are the column headings, I'll select this entire row and click bold to make it a bold color. Switching over to Google Sheets, we can do the same type of action here. Generally, the default pasted data is going to be slightly better formatted in Google Sheets, so you might not need quite as many formatting changes. But again, if you want to change the default, but you can see here at the top, my column headings are all in caps, and they are using a very light font. So I can click here to change my text color to black, and I can again bold these to make them a little bit easier to read. The second most common type of data formatting is changing the ordering of the data in our spreadsheet. So you can see here that by default it's ordering these from oldest to newest. But if I want to see my newest to oldest, what I would do is I would select my data and go to the Data tab at the top of the screen and click Sort. So when I sort this data, I pick the column that I want to sort by. So in this case, I want to sort by the date. Now I go to oldest to newest or newest to oldest. Click OK, and it reformats the data in the exact way that I asked it to do. In Google Sheets, we can do the same thing, except instead of having to go to the Sort button, you can see at the top of each of these columns there's a little Sort drop-down. So we click on this, and we can say Sort Sheet A to Z. Now with Google Sheets, you might notice there's a bit of a problem here. My column heading has disappeared. That's because Google Sheets by default will treat all of the data the same regardless of whether or not it thinks that it was a header or just the top of a column. So I need to cut this row here, go back to the top, and insert one above, and paste the row back to get my column header. The last thing you'll probably need to do when you're formatting your data is adding and removing columns. Deleting columns is easy. Simply select the columns you want to pick using the top of the page here and click Delete if you're using Excel. If you're using Google Sheets, it's very similar. Select the columns you want to remove, right-click, and put Delete Columns. That will clear the data.